Shawty got that super thing. Had it was something that's not for spec. As soon as I walk on the door.